Rabbi Friedman, shalom. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and enlighten us here at the Bnei Noach Academy. Of course, the topic, the big elephant in the room is Passover, Pesach, the festival of freedom. So Passover for the Ben Noach, Passover for the Torah person, the person who's concerned about what the Torah says for him, for her, but might not be Jewish and doesn't have the obligation to actually and actively adhere to all the rules of Passover, namely not to eat the leavened bread or to eat matzah, to drink the 4 cups of wine. But certainly throughout the entire Torah, we find that Pesach, Passover, is perhaps the most dominant concept in everything we do and our relationship with God. So I don't even know where to start. So I just want to pick your brain, and we'll let you control, hold the reins and run with it.
Well, the dominant theme, of course, is freedom. Coming out of slavery. But it's interesting that in most places in the Torah, it is referred to as coming out of Egypt. It doesn't say slavery, it says Egypt. A little known fact is that for almost a year before the Jews left Egypt, the slavery had been discontinued. They were not slaves. From the first plague, when the water turned to blood, the Egyptians were a little distracted. And they had no mind or heart for beating people up to make bricks and build buildings that they didn't need. They had real problems now. So as soon as the water turned to blood, the enslavement stopped. In fact, the Egyptians were buying water from the Jews because for the Jews, the water was still clear. That's why in the desert, every time there was a bit of a hitch, they said, let's go back. They didn't mean let's go back to slavery. That's insane. They meant let's go back to the way it was for the last year. So there was no slavery, but it was Egypt. What we're celebrating is not only the freedom from slavery, but also the freedom from Egypt. Now, Egypt represents limitation, narrow thinking, small-minded, myopic. So the celebration of Pesach is freedom from all restrictions on life. Because essentially, it is our existence that imposes restrictions. Life has no restrictions. So the fact that I need to eat, the fact that I need to sleep, that's not part of my life. Those are the demands that existence makes. Existence has so many conditions. You can't exist unless you eat. You can't exist unless you breathe. You can't exist unless you sleep. And then it's like, oh, you have to have quality sleep. You have to eat organic foods. No wonder you're getting sick. You're eating the wrong food. Oh, God, this existence is such a pain because it imposes so many restrictions. The biggest restriction, the biggest limitation is self-imposed. Slavery is imposed from the outside. Even an addiction is a form of slavery. It's imposed from the outside. I don't want it, and yet I can't help it. So it's something bigger than me, stronger than me. It's anti-me. But then there are restrictions that we put on ourselves willingly, by choice, out of self-love. In fact, self-love is our biggest handicap. I can't risk doing something important if it may end up being embarrassing, because my self-love is more important than anything important out there. That's a huge restriction. I mean, it literally paralyzes me. And nobody is forcing that on me. That's self-imposed. Coming out of Egypt means getting rid of those limitations, because all limitations come from existence, and we are meant to transcend our existence and live life. Does that need clarification, or is that obvious?
No, I perfectly understand that. I mean, so what you're saying is that this is symbolic. This is a representation of restrictions in life. In other words, this is a symbolic idea of getting out of our limitations, our own, you said myopic, what I call boundaries that we set for ourselves that we can't step out. The red lines that we create that really shouldn't be there.
Right. But it's not a limitation on life, it's a limitation on existence. And it interferes with life, because life has no limitations. Life means even in a concentration camp, you have a life to live. There are no restrictions.
Are you referring to Viktor Frankl's perspective?
That and more, yes.
Yeah. So, Rabbi, I'm doing this not behind your back. I'm asking you straight, in front of you. I'm asking you if this is a correct interpretation of what you're saying. Essentially, life is synonymous with godliness, with spirituality, right? It has no limit. So are you suggesting that when you connect to the source of life, you're able to overcome any boundaries, any challenges, any limitations? Is that essentially what this is all about?
Yes.
Okay, so how would you apply that? I mean, applying it practically to one's life. Let's say, with relationships, or with, maybe one's financial life, one's intellectual life, emotional life. How would one apply this idea practically?
We actually do it all the time without being conscious of it. You tell a child, I know you don't want to, but say, what are we doing there? Child doesn't want to go to sleep. He wants to party. He's afraid of missing out. And you say, I understand.
I guess I'm still a child.
We all are. The trick is to realize. Children don't realize that they're children. Adults realize that they're children. That's the only difference. So he's playing with his friend's toy, and it's time to go home. So he's taking the toy with him. And you say, no, you can't take the toy with you. So, oh, I want to. I like this toy. I need it. You say, well, yes, but it's not yours. What you're saying is, as far as existence is concerned, this is good for you. You like it. You enjoy it. You should have it. But if you're going to live a life, you can't take something that isn't yours. So here's a very fascinating thought in terms of how it's done. We read in the Torah that God said to Adam, of all the trees of the garden you may eat, but the tree of knowledge in the middle of the garden, do not eat from it. Understand, the main point that God is trying to make is that you shouldn't eat from the tree of knowledge. But why did he have to introduce it by saying all the other trees you can eat from? Just don't eat from this one. Why not just say, that tree, don't eat from it? Imagine you're Adam in the Garden of Eden. You were just created. and you're feeling a little hungry because you've never eaten.
Before.
Never eaten before. What would you do? If God said nothing, what would you do? Well, there are one of two possibilities. One possibility is there are a lot of trees with a lot of fruits. You're hungry, you eat. What else? The other possibility is I'm hungry, but those trees are not mine. I can't just go help myself to the fruits. They're not mine. When God says to Adam, of all the trees you may eat, we're being told that Adam would not eat. If God didn't give him permission to eat from those trees, he would not eat. So, well, what do you mean? He's hungry. What do you do? Starve? And the answer is yes. Yes, you starve. Just because you're hungry doesn't mean you can take somebody else's food. So we make a very interesting blessing every morning, like almost the first blessing of the day. We thank God for matir asurim. Now, matir asurim, of course, could mean he unties those who are bound, that during sleep, you're kind of tied up, immobile, and when you wake up, you can be moving around again. That needs a little help, because it's not that you're tied up and immobile. You don't want to move, you want to sleep. It's not like, oh my God, I can't move. No, you don't want to move. You're sleeping peacefully. So, the deeper meaning of it is God permits the forbidden, like matir isurim. God permits us things that are forbidden. What is forbidden? Everything. If it's not your world, you're not allowed to do anything. So what does it mean? I'm hungry, so if I'm hungry, I gotta eat, so I eat. Whose trees are you eating? I need to build a house. I mean, I have to have a house, come on. So I chop down some trees and make myself a log cabin. Whose trees are you chopping down? What is this assumption of entitlement? Or what am I supposed to do? Live without a house? Yes. Am I supposed to just go hungry? Yes. Not your world. Can you help yourself to stuff that isn't yours? See, this is the source of our highly, overly entitled generation. Yeah, I took it because, well, I needed it. And these people are criticizing a teacher because the teacher suggested that what the students were doing was wrong, and that's embarrassing, offending the student. And the teacher says, you're offending me. So you're allowed to do that? You're allowed to offend me in front of the whole class, but I'm not allowed to offend somebody with good message and good morals? And this entitlement is such a disease. I'm entitled to insult you so that you won't insult me. It's going beyond. I mean, this is like, it's like Adam saying to God, I'm going to eat from your fruits, and if you don't like it, well, then you're wrong. Man, like, out of control, out of control. So you know this joke about the atheist who said to God,
I thought he doesn't believe in God.
That's already funny, but that's not the point. So the atheist says to God, we used to need you, but we don't anymore because we have technology and we can do anything you do. We can do just as well. God says, you can make a man out of dust. He says, yeah, we have the technology. We are all Frankensteins. So God says, let me see you make a man out of dust. So the guy collects some dust, and God says to him, no, not my dust.
So Rabbi, can I ask you a question?
So wait a second. If God had not said, from all the trees you may eat, he wouldn't eat. Now look at the difference in terms of quality of life, attitude towards life. Most religions give the impression you have a life to live. You have needs that must be met. And they can be met. Except that God intervenes, mixes into your business, and tells you that you can't do what you need to do. No, you can't just have sex whenever, wherever, however. Okay, I'll accept that. Oh, but you also can't eat whatever and wherever and when. Ooh. In fact, you can't even dress however you want. You have to dress modestly. And you can't do business any way you want, with any deal you want, with any, at some point, no matter how religious you are, eventually you develop a little bit of a resentment. Like, get out of my life. Enough already. Let me live. And it's such a good complaint, valid complaint. You give me a life and then you don't let me live it. What's wrong with you? Even the most religious person has to have, at least somewhere in the back of his heart and mind, a little annoyance, like, oh no, can't do that even?
This.
You can't even covet? You're not allowed to be jealous? I didn't say anything. Yeah, I saw that look in your eye. Oh, that's also forbidden. Come on, let me live. Get off my back. But what if we don't have that feeling of entitlement? What if we are Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and we're not going to touch a tree if we're not told we can eat it? And God comes along and says, of all the trees you may eat, just not this one. Now the feeling is the opposite. This is not my world. I have no rights to anything. And yet God tells me I can eat from any one of those trees. Wow. And then he tells me I can get married, but not to someone else's wife. Okay. And then he tells me I can do business and I can make money by selling things and buying things. Just don't cheat. Oh, wow. In other words, everything I need is provided. Just not reckless, not gluttonously. So now, every day when you wake up in the morning, and you can chop down trees if you need a house, you can eat fruits from a tree if you're hungry, you can get married if you're lonely. Wow. So we are grateful for all the things that we are given rather than resentful for all the things we're forbidden. It's a completely different attitude. One of them is going to lead to crime eventually. The other one will lead to a productive life. So we're actually doing it all the time. What we're saying is there are restrictions on our existence. Like, for example, you can't create a monopoly. Oh, wait, monopoly is very good for my existence. I own everything and no one can compete with me. What's wrong with that? That gives me a very solid, secure existence. Well, too bad. You have to live a rather risky existence because life is more important than existence. That's what we're telling children. I know you want the toy, but it's not yours. So I'll take it home and I'll make it mine. What's the problem?
Simple.
I hold on to it long enough, it'll be mine. No, that violates life, even though it may be good for your existence. So Pesach means getting past our own existence, which imposes all sorts of restrictions.
Rabbi, I'm just
Go ahead.
out of curiosity, if I may. I know it's only one of the points you mentioned. Adam and Eve, their approach, you said that, it's obvious from God's statement to them that they were not going to partake. They didn't feel a sense of entitlement. Was that like that? Where did that stem from? Was that innocence, so to speak, naivete, or was that a maturity that they had already right when they were created? I'm just curious. I know it's not part of the conversation.
Oh, they were totally mature. And
So it came from having a real mature perspective of what's real and what's not.
And they were very conscious and aware of God, obviously.
Okay, that's one question. The second question is it okay to summarize from what you're saying that to have a sense of entitlement almost is tantamount of having like some kind of antithesis to belief in God? Is that what you're saying? Is, a sense of entitlement antithetical to real, true belief and trust in God?
Yes, and it's also, now it turns out, it's also a disease.
Well, we're suffering from today in society, as you described. So practically speaking, I mean, what you spoke is on more, I would say more on a global level. And in our personal lives, can you maybe perhaps give us one or two examples in our own personal lives of, this concept of going out of Egypt, going out of constraints and understanding limitations, but not limiting ourselves?
I would like to think that this is a daily common occurrence. You don't have anything to eat beyond today's meal. And somebody comes and begs you for some food. Are you going to give away your last loaf of bread? The entitled self says, of course not. If I had an extra loaf, I'd give you. I don't have any extra loaf. I just have enough for me. So of course not. No. That's your existence speaking. If you're alive, you give it away. There are no such restrictions on life. So legally, even according to the law of Torah, you're not obligated to give it away. No one will fault you for not giving away your last loaf of bread. But everyone will admire you if you do. So life takes you beyond existence. That is an amazing thing that we don't appreciate properly. A living being transcends nature. If you're alive, you can do things that are supernatural. It is supernatural to give away your last loaf of bread. It is supernatural to give up your one and only son. And yet we do it all the time. I don't mean constantly, I mean frequently. We give away, we go beyond the law, beyond our nature, because we know that that's the right thing to do. That's living. If you're restricted and limited to your existence and to its demands, you exist, but you're not really alive. And you haven't done anything terrible. You're just focused on your existence. So in a sense, the American attitude, live and let live. I don't bother you, you don't bother me, everybody's good. No, that's not good. That's just existing. Take it to the extreme and we see what it looks like. A person who says, I'd love to help you out. I understand you got a big problem and I have the solution, but I can't help you right now. It's my lunchtime. That does occur. There are such people. It's my lunchtime. Can you maybe eat lunch later? No, this is my lunchtime. How about if you skip lunch one day? Are you crazy? You gotta have lunch. It's lunchtime. Do you understand? It's time to have lunch.
For me.
Yes.
Not just time to have lunch, it's time to have lunch for me.
Yes. Those are the rules I live by. I can't not have lunch. I can't not have a car. I can't. That is so restrictive. That is so handcuffed.
Limiting.
Yeah. So that's what we need to get out of on Pesach. Even the fact that you will not eat bread, cake, for 8 days. Oh, you can go for 8 days without the staple of life? I mean, bread is symbolic. It doesn't have to be bread with gluten that is killing everybody.
I was going to say, I'm trying to stay up it all year.
So bread is symbolic of the most essential nourishment and whatever.
No, actually, you just started answering the question I was going to ask. I just jotted down a question. I was going to say, okay, so essentially Passover is about, leaving our existence and becoming alive. I'm sorry, leaving the limitation of our existence and coming alive. And my question was, how does this translate into eating matzah on the night of Passover, drinking wine, and most importantly, not eating the leaven, all the leaven stuff that you referred to, which I always stay off cake. That's not my weakness. The cake is not my problem. The bread, the wine, the other stuff. So how would, give us a perspective? How would that, express and enhance this living, this coming alive, as you put it?
Mm-hmm. The most essential part of the Seder, for those who make a Seder, is the Afrikoman. That's like the highlight of the whole thing. Because it now represents the Paschal Lamb. It's the conclusion, the highlight, the punchline of the whole Seder. And when do you eat the Afrikoman matzah? When you can't eat anymore. When you have no appetite. Meaning to say, it's not going to do anything for your existence.
Interesting.
So why are you eating it? Because you're free. You're free from the restrictions of your existence. So when a person says, oh, I'm so full, I couldn't eat another bite. See, that's your existence. First, you couldn't stop eating. Now you can't take another swallow because So your existence limits you on both ends. First you can't do without, and now you can't do with, and it's just, on Pesach, we are free. In fact, and I'm not recommending this carelessly, we have a custom that on the first night of Passover, on first night of Pesach, we don't lock our doors. Don't tell anybody. We don't lock our doors. We're safe. We're unconcerned with our existence. So we don't feel defensive, protective, intimidated, concerned, anxious. Not tonight. Tonight I'm fully alive and there's nothing you can do to dampen it. That's coming out of Mitzrayim. Everybody comes out of slavery. No, almost everybody. Some people actually prefer slavery. I don't mean inhumane behavior. I mean just the fact that you don't have to pay bills. You know, the IRS doesn't know you exist. You're off the grid. Some people prefer that. But to come out of Egypt, that can only happen if you have a God that you are serving. In other words, you can be supernatural, above nature, if there is something there above nature that you're trying to contact and make a relationship with. If there's no God, why is the supernatural any better than the natural? One more thought. There are some people who believe that nature is wonderful, the universe is perfect, and the only problem are human beings, because we mess up everything. We come into a beautiful garden, and before you know it, we've wrecked it all. So we are the toxins of the world. We are the clutter, the destroyers of everything beautiful and natural. Only an atheist could think like that. The truth is this: God created the world not like Einstein said, a world made up of time-space continuum. The world is made up of time, space, and people. The conscious mind, the soul of a human being. The soul of the human being is as essential to nature as time and space. Maybe even more. Because the presence of a human being actually changes the shape of the universe and the behavior of light and everything else. There is no universe without a soul, meaning a conscious human. Time and space would be different if there was nobody to think of it or to study it. So Einstein made a big mistake. He said, I have observed the universe. I've studied it. I've checked it out mathematically, philosophically, cosmically, and I've come to the conclusion there are two things, time and space. You know what he forgot? Einstein. He forgot Einstein. Maybe that was his humility. But you are studying the universe and you decide what the universe is. So when you come to your final conclusion, it should be, there's actually a book called Mr. Einstein and the Universe. Mm-hmm. Mr. Einstein is the universe, because together with time and space, the three elements, that's what makes up the universe. That's why if you think positive, positive things happen. If you think positive, even an inanimate object is going to behave differently. If you expect your car not to break down, it will not. How in the world? I mean, it's like psychosomatic.
I actually have to tell you something, Rabbi. I have to confess, and I share with people sometimes, and they all like, I become wide-eyed. I tell them, when I'm in a good mood, my car drives better. And I always thought it's because it just, I don't know what it is. It's the same old car. It's responding better. And now you've given me the insight that I thought I'm crazy. And most of the time I try to keep it to myself. My car drives better. I mean, my clothing feel better. It's so true. I appreciate that. Wow. Wow.
Most people would say there's no difference in the car. You're in a better mood, so you appreciate whatever.
No, I know my car.
There's a real difference.
Wow.
Also, if you're thinking positive about another person's health, he will be healthier even though he doesn't know what you're thinking. His heart will heal because you're expecting it to. So yes, we actually affect the physical objects around us. Now there's that experiment they did with water. They did it with rice.
I was going to say the one with rice. I just saw it recently. I was fascinated by it. Do you mind sharing it with the public so they have an idea what you're talking about?
What they did is they had 2 bags of rice. They spoke positive words to one bag, the presence of one bag, and they said negative and nasty things in the presence of the other bag. The one that was exposed to the negative words turned brown. And the ones that were exposed to the positive words stayed fresh. They did the same with water. When you freeze water, the drops form into flakes. And those flakes have patterns like snowflakes. The glass of water to which they said positive things, when they froze it and looked at the flakes, the ice flakes, had beautiful symmetrical pattern. The ones that they said negative words to had ugly shape and ugly arrangement.
Wow.
Asymmetrical. They even did another thing. They simply wrote a word on a piece of tape and taped it to the bottle. Didn't say anything. Then they wrote a positive word like hello and taped it to the other bottle, and the same results. So your feeling, your opinion, your voice, your expectation actually affects physical inanimate objects. Torah told us this a long time ago, and we had a hard time believing it. V'ha'olam nosan b'libay. Torah says, God placed the world in our hearts, in the hearts of humans. We thought that meant that we are responsible for the morality of the world. Nobody thought we're actually responsible for the physical structure of the world. But we are. So this is the difference between living and existing. If you're merely existing, you have no effect on other existences because you get the same problem. But if you're alive, then you transcend nature. Or at the very least, you become a force of nature that is more powerful than the other 2 forces or other 2.
So, Rabbi, can you just give us just briefly, focus in, zoom in on the matzah, on the consumption of matzah, and perhaps how that can inspire us and enlighten us in this realm of living versus existence. And then also the 4 cups of wine, because I know this one integral part of the Seder, the Passover observance.
Well, the matzah thing, you know the thing,
Yeah,
the matzah thing is, what is the difference between bread and matzah? Air, hot air.
yeah, just hot air, right.
Is the same ingredients. But if you let it sit, it'll puff up. If you bake it right away, it'll stay flat. So again, the difference is the hot air that puffs up the bread. That's the difference between living and existing. Existence is full of air. It's all puffed up. Self-importance. My needs are so important. I have to have what I have to have. Those are the demands of existence. Matzah means there's nothing terribly important about me that has to happen. It's very strange that matzah is called the bread of affliction. It's humble bread. It's what they used to feed the slaves because it was cheap and it was nourishing and satisfying. So it was the quickest way to get the slaves.
It stays in your stomach for a long time.
So it was the quickest way to get the slaves fed and back to work. So it's a bread of affliction, a poor man's bread. So we sit down to eat the poor man's bread. And the first thing we do at the beginning of the Seder is invite anyone who needs, come on in and join us. Well, you're very generous for a poor man. So are you feeling rich or are you feeling poor? What is the experience of liberation from limit? Do you feel the limit or do you feel the liberation?
Liberation, I would imagine.
Of?
Limitation.
So if you're not aware of the limitation, so it's kind of any transition has to be made of both halves. I'm leaving this to get to that. So on the one hand, it's a bread of affliction. On the other hand, it makes you more generous. It makes you more open instead of closing you down and making you greedy and selfish and self-absorbed.
So, Rabbi, but I hear what you're saying, and I was aware of that concept of, matzah represents humility. It's not just about yourself and so on. But I'm going back. We all are world travelers today. The first thing you see on the plane before the plane takes off, they show you, and what happens if the oxygen masks drop, and they instruct you first to put on your own oxygen mask before you can, put on even your child's, right? Which your natural instinct is to put on your child's first, or the person near you. So my question is, I understand we need humility and it has to be more than just our existence, but I still need to be I still need to be me. I still need to feel my existence to some degree in order to be able to help someone. In other words, what I'm asking is, where is the healthy balance between not having arrogance, but at the same time feeling the self-worth? Am I making sense?
What exactly does self-worth mean? Nobody likes me, but I like myself, so who cares?
Nah.
No such thing, right?
Right.
I don't need you to love me. I love myself. No, doesn't work. What is self-acceptance or self-awareness or what is that? I hate to say this, but despite all the messages of modern psychology and pop psychology, and self is a disease. Focus on self. What is my value? What makes me valuable? Me? You're running in circles. You're not making any sense. I am valuable because I'm valuable to myself. A legend in your own mind. Like, what is that? If you're valuable, you must be valuable to someone, not to yourself. That's nonsense. You're not valuable to yourself. You're obsessed with yourself, even if you think you're worthless. But if you think you're worthless, you're going to think about it all the time, and you're going to be obsessed by the fact that you're worthless. The fact that your neighbor is worthless doesn't bother you at all. So self is just an obsession. The better and the quicker and the more we get beyond ourselves, the more healthy we're going to be. So yes, are you valid? Are you worthy? Are you important? Are you necessary? And of course, before you can answer that, you have to answer the more basic question: necessary to whom? Valuable to whom? Important for what? Turns out you're necessary to the creator of the universe. If that don't get you out of bed, I don't know what will. So do you have to have self-importance? Self-importance is nonsense. I mean, some kid walks into a classroom and says, I think I'm the smartest kid in this room. And within 5 minutes, the rest of the class show him that he's probably only second to the least intelligent. What value, what meaning, what substance is there to a person thinking he's smart or thinking he's capable, talented, gifted? So what if you think so? That doesn't, it means nothing except that you won't have any friends. So this whole notion of building up the self, it's such a disease. It's making us sick. The objective in life is to get past the self. And yet so much of psychology focuses you right back on yourself. That's why there are times when therapy actually makes it worse. You're trying to get beyond yourself and the therapist won't let you. So yes, you are valuable. Just figure out to whom.
To whom, to what, right. So can we take a few moments to just focus in on the, because again, it's an integral part of the Seder, the consumption of the 4 cups of wine, and there's even a 5th cup. How would that, apply to all this, to our lives in general, particularly in this realm of, existence versus, being alive?
Well, there are 2 parts to that. Why wine and why 4 cups?
No, the wine.
Or 5. Wine represents 2 things. Wine represents secrets, and wine represents joy. Wine represents secrets, first of all, because the wine is created in secret. It's contained within the grape. If you've never squeezed a grape, you just look at it, you have no idea that there's wine in there. It's a great discovery one day when somebody, oh, there's wine in that. So wine is not like water that is revealed, obvious, uncovered. Wine kind of is, it's very modest. It's not in your face. And that's the secret. Secret meaning the deeper dimension, not the one you wear on your sleeve. The truer, more intimate feelings that don't thrive from exposure. It thrives on privacy, in privacy. When you drink wine, the secret part of you comes to the surface. Just as the wine was extracted from the grape and now is exposed as wine, when you drink the wine, the inner feelings, the inner thoughts that you generally don't expose come to the surface. That's why people say if you get drunk, you will lose your inhibitions. Not that you'll do something criminal. No, your morality does not relax. What relaxes is your hesitation to expose or to reveal those inner feelings. So when the wine goes in, the secrets come out. In a positive sense, assuming that the inner feelings are better, deeper, and more true than the external feelings. Freedom, obviously, allows you to reveal your inner feelings without the natural restriction or hesitation. So every time we celebrate a miracle, we use wine. Every Shabbos, God created the world in 6 days. You drink some wine. You sanctify the day with wine. Some people think any alcohol can do, but there is no substitute for wine. Although alcohol is also not revealed, it's hidden in the grain or in whatever. There's actually prune alcohol. Alcohol hiding in a prune. Okay. Wonder what that does. Brings out the secrets.
Not as in prune juice. That's not what you're thinking.
Yeah. So wine is in a category by itself.
And how does it associate with joy? You said it brings up the secrets and it leads us to joy.
Yeah.
Why is that true joy?
Because the true definition of joy is disposed to emotion. A person who's happy is not feeling anything yet, but he's willing. So a person who's happy will cry more at a funeral than a person who's sad. Because the happy person is willing to feel. To feel what? Well, whatever's going on. If there's a grief going on, the happy person will grieve better, deeper. And if there's good news, he will feel more grateful and happier. But happiness itself is a disposition. It's not an emotion. When you're sad, you're not disposed towards feelings. When you're happy, you welcome all emotion, whatever emotion is appropriate. So when you come out of slavery, when you come out of restrictions, if you're feeling that relief or that release or that, you are happy. So the wine puts you in a positive frame of mind. So it's not that the wine makes you happy. That would be a psychedelic. The wine doesn't make you happy. It also doesn't make you sad. There are people who, when they drink a little wine, they become sad. They're always moaning and crying and then there are people who, once they take a few drinks, they're dancing on the tables. It's not the wine that makes you happy, and it's not the wine that makes you sad. It's the wine that opens you up to the feelings that you otherwise choke back or
suppress.
Yeah.
So, Rabbi, can I ask you a technical question? Being that this class is addressed to Bnei Noach, is it okay for Ben Noach, for a non-Jew, to actually conduct a Seder, like to have matzah, to drink the wine, and technically speaking?
Not really.
Not really.
Not really. Because you're commemorating something that happened to the Jewish people because they were the Jewish people. But of course, there's a universal element. And that is living life to the point where you are liberated from the restrictions of your own existence. That's for everybody.
Could I make the argument, perhaps, that this was a prerequisite to the revelation of Mount Sinai, and therefore it does have a connection to the non-Jew more directly?
Yes, the principle does. You can't serve God joyfully if you're burdened by your own existence.
Got it.
But will matzah help a non-Jew get to that feeling? Don't know. If you weren't commanded to do it, why would it work? 4 cups of wine, that works for everybody.
And good wine. Yeah, make sure it's good wine. Right. Well, high alcohol content. So, Rabbi, let me ask you a question. I this is something that bothered me many times. I know there are, a lot of explanations on this and so on. But if you can share, perhaps, I like your perspective, and especially kind of circle back to this whole realm that we're in, existence versus being alive. At the end of the day, we find ourselves all the time thanking God for taking us out of Egypt. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Whether it's throughout the Seder, every single day. And at a certain point, I'm like, hey, you got us into this mess in the first place. So he put us into Egypt, and we couldn't even make our own way out of it. So he helped us get out, right? And now you're saying it's about that God put us in this mess that we're in. The Egypt's this restraint of existence that we have. He put us in there. So why should we be so thankful? What is really so special about it?
It's such a fundamental question.
You say take another whole class?
No. I'm saying that's the question that has to be answered right at the beginning of your life. Person can't stop thanking God because he was in a car accident and he didn't get hurt. Well,
you got me in this mess in the first place. That's my question.
A person is deathly ill but survives. Can't thank God enough. Doesn't God also cause the illness? Of course he does. If you don't believe that, you don't believe in God at all. So here's the point. In a relationship, you want to always be on the same page. Right? When your wife is happy, you're happy with her. When your wife is sad, you're sad with her. Not because you want to be sad, but because you want to be where she is. If she's into sadness, you get sad with her. You don't abandon her and go off on a different direction. So everything we do, every mitzvah we have, is a way of staying on the same page with God. 6 days of the week you shall work and do your labor, but on the 7th, why is that? Because 6 days of the week God works and creates, and then on the 7th he rests. So when he's creating,
You're
we're creating with him. When he's resting, we rest with him. When God takes us down to Egypt, it pains him. Surprise, surprise, it pains us too. We both hate it. When he takes us out, we are very thrilled because so is he. A king sends his army to war. He hates it. He's a good man. He loves his people. Sending them to war, he hates it. But when he brings them back from the battle, it's a party, it's a celebration, it's a parade. Why? Because he brings them back with full enthusiasm and desire and enjoyment, not the way he sent them. He sent them because, you got to do what you got to do. When he brings them back, it's not, you got to do what you got to do. He loves seeing them come back. And that's what we share. We are thrilled that God loves taking us out of Egypt.
But Rabbi, your analogy, this analogy of the king was compelled by circumstances. He had to win a war, he had to defend the country. What compelled God to put us into Egypt that made him sad? In other words, no one wants to be sad. I would imagine even God doesn't want to be sad or in agony, like you said. So he kind of twisted his own arm to put us into Egypt. So he's sad with us now, and then he takes us out. So what is this idea? And, in life too, like you said, we have limitations, we have problems, we have setbacks, we have, challenges. God's creating all of those. So what's compelling him to do it? I mean, in other words, what's the good in it that he's, so to speak, compelled to act that way?
That is the story of God.
Say, I'm trying to be God.
No, God does things that pain him, that go against the grain, like creating evil. Why does God create evil? I know the conventional wisdom to test us. That's evil.
Yeah, that's cruel. I was going to say, why are you testing me?
Why are you so cruel? There is no evil, but you're not content. You want to create evil to see how evil people will be. That is so perverse. God created evil because it can exist. And he doesn't like evil. So he creates it and we fix it so that it's not evil anymore. That's called the oneness of God. God is looking for a united reality where everything, including evil, is part of godliness. So he creates evil with the intention of reforming it, redeeming it, and turning it into good. We get the job of actually making that transformation. So it's not that he creates evil just to see if we're going to be evil. He creates evil because we can turn evil into good. We can turn darkness into light. We can turn bitterness into sweetness.
Wow.
But until that happens, God suffers.
So that's his investment, basically. That's his investment in order to get the gain. So, Rabbi, I know we went a little over time. This is so enjoyable. I didn't even notice the time flying by. Can we segue to the end of Passover when we commemorate and celebrate the splitting of the sea? Just a couple of minutes, give us some insight how that, what that represents and how that can inspire us in our day-to-day lives.
If 4 cups of wine can bring out the hidden truth, the splitting of the sea was the same idea magnified to cosmic proportions. The waters of the sea hide what is in the sea. There's a whole world going on down there. Splitting the sea and making it dry land means revealing the secrets of the sea as vividly and as openly as dry land. Just as you can see whatever is on the land, we were able to see all the secrets that the sea usually hides. God revealed himself in such a way that no one prior to that experience had ever seen God. The problem is, it was overwhelming. And so it didn't last. When you're overwhelmed by something, you're very excited for a while, and then there's no excitement at all. Because overwhelmed means you can't internalize. Like you bite off more than you can chew. That's great, but you're going to have to spit it out. Because you can't internalize. So it was a great uplifting experience, but it was not like the event at Mount Sinai. At the event at Sinai, we had a very high experience, but we came away with a book, came away with a code that we can internalize, we can study it, we can understand it, we can analyze it, we can ask, we can answer. But before that could happen, we needed that overwhelming excitement of anticipation. Like, get excited about what's coming because you got this taste for it at the splitting of the sea, where you saw like person wakes up and realizes, wow, there is so much to know. Well, that's great, but you don't know anything. So I'm glad you realize there's so much to know, but what are you going to do about it?
Now we got to start, right?
So at the splitting of the sea, we realized, wow, we are unaware of the biggest truths, of the biggest realities, and we are blissfully ignorant. So that when God said, okay, let me teach you, let me give you a book of wisdom, we said, oh, yeah.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
So then there's one other point. It doesn't have to be physical wine that brings out the truth in you. There's also the emotional wine. We all exist in multi-layers. There's my superficial existence. There's also my internal. So it's not just life or God or the Torah that have mysteries that need to be revealed. So do I. That part of me can easily relate to the secrets or the mysteries of the Torah. And the mysteries and secrets of the Torah are very closely related to the mystery and secrets of God. So you might say that the splitting of the sea was an intoxicating experience.
It was.
Yes, it was. And then Mount Sinai was an intoxicating experience that we've never recovered from.
It's a good hangover. So, Rabbi, I have to say, I almost feel like the Jews at the splitting of the sea. It says Moses had to forcibly take him away from there and have him go and continue on. So, just out of respect for time and respect for protocol, I said we went over time. I was enjoying this so much, but I guess we have to tear ourselves away. And until next time, thank you so much. I want to wish you a happy and kosher Passover, and wish everybody, watching this a successful Passover, not just on Passover, but throughout the entire year and our entire lives. You're the Kohen, you're the priest, so you give us.
I'm into that.
Okay, that's a blessing. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
But we really should look forward to a lot of good news. If we all get past our limitations, the world is fantastic.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you.